So there we go, there's the world map, and there's South Africa at the very bottom in the middle. To be honest, I'm not an expert on this topic. I couldn't find anyone else to do it. So I just did some of my own research. I also spoke to some parents with adults with prader-willi syndrome as part of my research. So just to say that, about the United Nations Convention and how does that work in South Africa. The government did actually ratify it. However, it hasn't been assimilated into the legislation for people with intellectual disability, although intellectual disability is supposed to be included amongst all disabilities. There's no sort of mention in the law about how these commitments are supposed to be implemented or monitored. And the reality is that if you're living in South Africa with intellectual disability, the picture isn't very rosy. There's not enough schools for children with intellectual disability. Parents often can't work because they have to care for their child. They're not educated on sexual health if they don't go to school. And 2/3 of teens and adult females are actually at risk of sexual abuse. Other violated rights are physical abuse, exclusion, barriers to medical and health services, involuntary confinement, denial of marriage or parenting, financial exploitation, unemployment is a big problem, occupational restrictions, and living safely outside of institutions. These rights are violated in the homes, in places of work, care centres, everywhere, basically. So in summary, the convention has made really no difference to people living with intellectual disability in South Africa. But to look for the positive, there's also no monitoring or checking up on restrictions, and therefore that can go ahead as normal for adults with prader-willi syndrome in South Africa. Speaking to families, so we have one home that's privately run for adults with prader-willi syndrome in South Africa, so it's not a government institution. So her feedback was that even if our adults did receive equal rights, she feels that for work and things like that, they would still need a facilitator or carer to go with them as a result of the unique challenges. She also said they haven't got any restrictions on what they feed in the kitchen is locked and they get fed at meal times. Another adult whose daughter lives at home shared that her daughter's disabilities in themselves actually prevented her from having any freedom. And then the other thing that's just across the board is that we don't have a lot of public transport, and the inability for most adults with prader-willi syndrome to drive, as well as the fact that there's quite a lot of crime in certain areas in South Africa, prevents most adults with intellectual disability from having any freedom to go out of the home unattended anyway, unless they walk, and you can't walk very far. So so there's very, very little change overall in terms of this convention, in terms of the lives of people with intellectual disability in South Africa. And the quality of life that you have is very much dependent on your economic well-being. So that's it for me.